Yeah, good morning, everyone. I hope your summer is continuing to go well. As David mentioned, we look forward to seeing your name and affiliation in the chat. Really excited for our presentation today from Accelerate Mississippi. And before that, I'm going to pass it to our director, Matt Bogosian, and David for any updates.
Great, thanks, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Bogosian, Executive Director of AMCC, and for those of you who are relatively new, this is AMCC's weekly national 30-minute call that's been happening for years of stakeholders around the country working to strengthen the American manufacturing sector in their regions and across the country, kind of bottom up by strengthening the ecosystem of support that we need to strengthen in key industries like defense and transportation, energy, agriculture, IT, and health. This call is augments this AMCC update that Michelle, one of our many BFFs that are involved, Michelle Burris from the Century Foundation, and many other BFFs, best friends forever, we call them. Sarah Lee has aptly named them, from federal agencies, nonprofits, all kinds of research folks that are kind of on this American journey together to try to strengthen American manufacturing. And so we appreciate them being on. And what Michelle is talking about is this newsletter. If you don't have it already, the AMCC update comes out every week. Just drop a request in the chat and David will make sure you get the weekly update. On these Monday calls, we have two flavors. One is where we have a round robin, where we talk about issues of concern. Next week will be a round robin discussion. So if you have a topic that you want to discuss, drop it into the chat now or send me and David a note. There's a lot of things we could talk about, some of which we referred to in last week's AMCC update, like the Recompete Act competition that is coming up. Lots to discuss that there, as well as many other issues. So let us know on that front. Other things from last week's AMCC update, aside from the Recompete pilot program announcement. And I should, before I go on, in the AMCC update, the Recompete pilot program, it focuses, on bringing down the rate of prime age unemployment in priority areas. And there's an EDA map in the AMCC update and on the EDA website, whatever, there's a map showing you where those areas are identified. So you can check that out, see where those areas are compared to your jurisdiction. So anyway, that's one of the things I want to highlight from last week's AMCC update. Another one is a webinar coming up from our friends that we're partnering with in the tool development process for ecosystem metrics tool, Argonne National Laboratories. They're having a webinar on Thursday, the 13th of July, on equity and really kind of getting evidence. I mean, we'll see. We got to learn what they're talking about, but we think it's going to be very useful in terms of the work that we all do, and especially in terms of developing better tools to understand equitable issues within our manufacturing ecosystem. We have our AMCC roadshows that are happening around the country. Next week, we're lucky enough to be going to Illinois for a couple of stops in Peoria and Chicago with our good friends there to learn smart lessons that we can share around the country from their perspective, and challenges too, right? Because this platform is about sharing not just our successes, but our challenges so we can strengthen each other going forward. In August, we have a trip set up for Virginia and North Carolina, and then also in California. So lots going on there. As I said at the outset, this is a call where we have a presentation, and we're lucky enough to have with us Dr. Courtney Taylor from the great state of Mississippi, who hosted one of our AMCC roadshows not too long ago, where Dave and I were able to learn what the good hard work that's happening in Mississippi. So we're excited to hear from Courtney. They have this ecosystem approach down there to their workforce challenges, and so I look forward to having Courtney share that experience. I'm going to at the end of this call, I'm going to pass the baton off to David so he can conclude the call. My wife and I are on our anniversary trip right now, and so I've got to peel off early. But as you know, these calls are recorded, so I will catch up on the end of the call later on when I return home. So without any further ado, let me turn it to Courtney Taylor, Mississippi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Enjoy your vacation. Let me try to share my screen real quick. I've only got one slide, so I'm not going to kill anybody with slides today. But I do hope you enjoy your vacation, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody and have further conversation after this. We just wanted to share with you all, first of all, appreciate you guys coming down for the roadshow. We had a blast. The connection points that we've been getting since then have been very, very helpful as we move forward with different programs. So we're really appreciative of that effort, and hope everybody takes advantage of that. And as you learn things, maybe everybody else will share with us too. But tell you a little bit, I'm going to start big picture with our office and kind of go down to what we're doing. We're a new state office. We've been around for 2.5 years, a little less than 2.5 years. We were formally established with our first employee in April of 2021. And we're really building from the ground up during really challenging workforce times, when workforce is the sexiest thing that nobody actually wants to do anything about. Well, not nobody, but people just talk about it. And so what we're trying to do now is really do things, not just talk about it, not make plans, but physically move forward and say, this is what we have to do. It is very challenging. What we're essentially doing is we're trying to sandwich down our ecosystem coordinators, career coaches at the local level, our office in Jackson with the federal workforce policy. So there's along with state policy, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to do. Ultimately, at this moment, we're managing about $120 million worth of federal and state money. We have some ARPA money. We have some DOD money through OLDCC. We get about $40 million in annual funding to support our efforts. And these efforts range from workforce training to career coaches in high schools to economic development activity support. So it's very broad, but that's kind of a benefit, and I'll talk about that in a second. So we support those economic development policies, projects, and then we recommend policies. And so essentially, we were created because we have this extremely disjointed system. And as I've walked through this, and as we've all experienced, I think it's disjointed around the country in a lot of places, sometimes even at the federal level, really working to derive what our new modern workforce policy is going to look like in Mississippi. It's not what we've done in the past isn't going to get us in the future, and we know that. So we're really trying to take hard looks at everything, working, as much as we can with our local partners to kind of drive things up and understand what the actual problems are to address those. I jokingly tell people, like, my job is to frustrate everybody a little bit, and I'm really good at it. That part of it anyway, not that they would appreciate that, but we're just moving everybody's cheese, and it's not fun. But it is very, very valuable. We have got great partners around the state who sometimes don't understand what we're trying to do. Communication is vital. And I'm not going to tell you that we do a 100% fantastic job of it. So we're always improving in that world. Just trying to coordinate these efforts. So what you see on the screen here is essentially Mississippi has 4 local workforce development areas. We've split those essentially into a total of 8 to get kind of a really local view of what's going on. And our ecosystem coordinators, a lot of them join this call. They are there doing the hard work of kind of connecting all of these different points. And all these different points, we have what we call tables. So you see on the screen our WIOA partners, community colleges, K-12, IHL, nonprofits, all the things, to try to coordinate them and keep an ear to the ground, essentially, to say what's going on locally. This goes in every industry across sectors, healthcare, manufacturing, construction. So it's been very valuable to have this because our office is based out of Jackson. We're a central office. We can't possibly hear all the little rumblings that are going on. We can't possibly address everything at the local level. So our coaches help that. Our coaches help us kind of think through as we're moving forward, what do we need to do? Where do we need more communication? Where don't people understand things? So it's been it's been challenging. Creating these ecosystems is not easy work because now you're just adding layers. And so it takes a lot of work to get information to and from local levels. But it's work that has to be done, identifying our challenges, our opportunities. And the other benefit of having our coaches or our career coordinators, our ecosystem coordinators, sorry, y'all, is that they are effectively locals. So we are referred to as Jackson, in a lot of ways when people talk about state agencies. But our coordinators are locals, so they have a different viewpoint of things. They're treated a little bit different in the community, so it allows us to have a higher quality impact. So obviously the state created our office because it realized we've got to do more to pull together this disjointed workforce system. We hear a lot right now about the federal agencies. You got nine agencies, 44 programs, whatever it is right now. And them being disjointed, but it's also disjointed in most states. And a lot of states just choose to create more government to go do things that aren't being done instead of trying to take a holistic look and saying, okay, what's not being done? What do we need to do? So that's how we're trying to approach this. The other reality in workforce is that if you look at this, if we think about the image on the screen, can y'all see my screen? Okay. But if you look at this image on the screen, if you think about all of these people's place in workforce development, most people in workforce development are specialists in their area. So if you're in K-12, you know a lot about K-12. You know a lot about WIOA if you're a WIOA person or a WIOA local workforce development board or whatever. You're a community college or an IC, you know a lot about your piece, but it's the connecting piece of connecting it all across is where we believe we have to go as a state to really drive this in the future, connecting industry to K-12 and back and forth and not just expecting it to happen locally. So that's kind of where we fit to try to understand the entire field, which is a lot, but not necessarily specializing in all these different areas, but kind of understanding them and connecting them. And to that end, we are working through a true unified state workforce plan for the first time. This is not a federal plan, even though it will inform the federal plans, your WIOA plans, your core partner plans. But the goal is to set the trajectory of where we're going. And then everybody starts aligning their resources, including the state. Now that is not easy. It's going to be challenging, but it kind of keeps us going on this world that we're already working through. So working on both ends, trying to break through jargon, break through legacy thinking, and then very frankly, breaking through the first and best. I hear so much of we're first and we're best, and the egos in this industry are really, really hard. And I get it because every community has different things, every partner, everything, but trying to say, okay, be proud of what you're doing. But then let's figure out how it all fits together. So that's kind of where the big picture of where we're at is. We started last year kind of breaking out into the federal space with our DoD grant. We applied for an OLDCC grant for shipbuilding. It is a massive industry in Mississippi. And one thing that we learned with defense manufacturing in general was we have some state funds that our office now operates that really kind of excluded our small to medium, especially our small supplier companies, things like that, because of some of the requirements. It didn't do it on purpose. It just was kind of a byproduct. So working through fixing that, helping our companies understand the resources that we have available, and digging deep right now into shipbuilding, but that's obviously going into the defense manufacturing base and exposing where we need to assist there, specifically think workforce training, not even workforce development in some senses. But through that program, we're working to expose more kids through Flex Factor and coaches to careers in shipbuilding, careers in defense manufacturing, and really helping them understand their communities, regardless of whether they're rural or urban, because that is a missing link. And so since we've established that and become a part of that, these kind of like opportunities like AMCC have come up. But to that end, we've also said, hey, you know what, we've got to understand what other states are doing, what other regions are doing to support shipbuilding, if I'm just talking about shipbuilding. So back in April, I think we went and visited with the Virginia Defense Manufacturing Group to say, hey, what are you doing? And just sharing freely. And I think that is one of the major challenges in workforce in general is that usually if you're in a local situation, there's one of you. If you're at a community college, there's only one workforce person. If you're in a local WIOA industry, you're the person serving that field. So I think this is vital that we do these kinds of efforts, that we coordinate, because it is hard. And as a new agency, new entity, sorry, not agency, but as a new entity, you know, we're a little sensitive to that. I'm a little sensitive to the reality that, you know, who else is doing work like this? Who else can we rip off and duplicate R&D? Who else can we work with? You know, so that's kind of what we're doing right now is, we don't think we have all the answers. We have some answers that are working for our state. There's plenty more to solve. So we are in this continuous improvement loop as an office, which is kind of fun if you're people who like to solve problems, and really just trying to break down the challenges, the opportunities, and understand them better. But trying to get this model really solidified, because what we can't afford to do is for any one of these partners to not be at the table. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses that we have found in workforce policy in this state is it gets congregated to certain places and people, and it's got to have a holistic view. So I'm not telling you that it's perfect yet. We've got a lot of work to do there. But so far we're getting really good information from our partners, helping them understand kind of some realities. That's the other thing that happens in this space is people make up the whys, like, why is this happening? Well, because. It's like, no, that's probably not because. So really helps us get ahead of some things. So anyway, that's a lot in a little bit, but that's kind of our overall effort with what we're doing, and just really appreciative of the ability and the opportunity to connect with other people in this space doing similar work to support industries. It's already been very beneficial as we've looked at some opportunities and enhanced our connection points around the country. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can and work with anybody as we move forward. And if you have any ideas or if you're walking through this journey too, we'd love to connect.
Great, Courtney. Thank you so much for your presentation and for all this important information that you just shared with us. I want to actually, so we can open it up for questions right now. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. But one thing that I wanted to focus on right away that you were mentioning at the end, Courtney, which is getting better connected with other practitioners across the country. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the impetus of you reaching out, or of Virginia's defense manufacturing community reaching out to you, and how that connection has proven valuable. We actually have Robert Allen Baker here on the call, who I believe you've met with. I don't know, Robert, if you want to join really quick on video, or maybe you want to ask the question that you put in chat as well here.
The question put in the chat is a good one for Courtney.
What was that? I missed the question.
It's whether or not the defense manufacturing strategy for the state has been supportive and has really helped you with move your initiative ahead. Has it given you additional credibility and strength?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also allowed us to not have to rework things that are already in the process. I mean, I think strategies are vital. So having that strategy rolling, I mean, the whole reason why we were able to even apply was because work had already been done. So we were kind of a few steps ahead of the game. But there's a lot of work going on right now with Mississippi. Our MSET partners are partnering with Mississippi Defense Initiative also. So yeah, I think the strategy is very helpful because, very frankly, as a state, we've got multiple partners coming at this from multiple angles. So they're talking about contracting consortiums, which I don't know anything about. And we're talking about workforce consortiums. So trying to kind of meet that in the middle. But yeah, it's good to see you guys.
Great. And let's see, I've got another question right here that, I think came up a little bit, Courtney, when we were down visiting, which is, when you're considering the different ecosystem regions that you've identified in your state? And this is a question from Ben Cross at Ohio University, is does your ecosystem cross state boundaries at all? And if so, how do you work with other jurisdictions?
Very carefully. So formally, it's funny because people like to say that, oh, this group has their invisible boundaries. We all have our invisible boundaries, and they all genuinely go back to taxes usually. At the moment, informally, our ecosystems that we have set up do not cross state lines. They are very specific to Mississippi. Now, we do have efforts that cross state lines. So we are working with a group in Memphis right now. So if you look at that ecosystem 1 and 2 area, far northwest Mississippi, there's a lot of work going on in Memphis. And I think that was an EDA grant at some point that they're doing. So we are trying to work with them and pull some of their resources, or they're offering, their resources into Mississippi. I expect to have some regional work down in ecosystem 8 with the shipbuilding. I think right now, frankly, it's more of either an informal approach or through grants that we have received. But when it comes to our formal ecosystem, the answer is no. I know our WIOA groups operate technically, with outside state people to try to help get people into training. But anyway, that's always going to be a tough one. So that's where the federal resources are actually very helpful to go across state lines and kind of join up for very specific. I'd really call it more of like a coalition, just for a specific purpose, and then break it back apart.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Sarah Lee, I know you've put in a couple of questions. Why don't you go for it?
Thanks, Courtney. This is fantastic what you're doing. I got a couple questions. One, could you explain more about flex factor?
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, you've talked a little bit about shipbuilding. What are the other industries that you think that are going to be key?
Yeah, so Flex Factor is a program offered through the DoD Institute Next Flex out of San Jose, California. It is a career exposure program. It actually changed my whole mindset in workforce, honestly, almost 7-8 years ago when I was in Huntsville. I moved here from Huntsville, Alabama. And that was where I was exposed to it. But essentially, it's a program that goes into the high schools, and we use our community college partners. They go into the high schools. They work through a series of events to conceptualize a hardware device to solve a problem from their community. So Flex Factor does printed electronics. When I first started working with it, it was flexible hybrid electronics, which I couldn't even say the words in line. But it does, the thing I love about it so much is it is very specific, it is very pointed, and it connects the student to both an industry and the pathway to that industry. Most of those things exist disparately right now. So your industry, I had a mechatronics program. I was a VP at a community college, and I had a mechatronics program, but there were no jobs called mechatronics technicians in my community. They were industrial maintenance technicians. And so the program kind of does that deep work of connecting your industry partners directly to K-12 in a real way, gives the students some power. The instructors don't have the answer. So it's actually a really good soft skill development piece, because nobody has the answer. They have to figure it out. But anyway, so it's with NextFlex, and I can connect you, Sarah, if you want, to Courtney Power at NextFlex. It's just a great overall program. So far as industries, it's a tough one in Mississippi. We're a very rural state, so we have a lot of challenges. Manufacturing is growing like a weed here right now. But the other industry, which is not your normal industry because it's not an export industry, is healthcare. It's kind of walking through the same challenges. Construction is a given with manufacturing. Those two go hand in hand. Those two are growing. But in order for our communities it is survival in our rural communities, healthcare, we've got to do something. And it really is a lot like manufacturing today, where people kind of have the same view of healthcare. It's dangerous, scary. They don't know what to expect because of COVID. So we are working really hard to get more people engaged, improve our retention rates, our graduation rates, things like that with healthcare, because we have an aging population. Everybody does. We've got 7 years before all of our baby boomers are over the age of 65. And in manufacturing, we can automate. We can't automate, picking people up in beds and bathing them and taking care of them. And so there's a lot of challenges there. Obviously, manufacturing is going bonkers right now in good ways, but there's still all these traditional community supports that when people wanted to do the jobs, they just kind of took care of themselves. But now we're trying to work through some of the realities that they're facing too.
Great. Thanks, Courtney. I actually had one more question, unless if anyone else has anything, I'll be sure to ask your question first. Melissa, I see you just came off mute.
I just wanted to say hello to Courtney. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. This was an introduction that was made through Hiwat, who I also see is on the line. So this group has been really instrumental, and I'm hoping to support Courtney in Mississippi and standing up some registered apprenticeship programs. So I look forward to our meeting. Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to put a face to the name.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. One thing right before we go that I wanted, Courtney, to give you an opportunity to speak on is the career coach network that you've been deploying, because I think this is a really interesting, it goes back to the first thing that you said in your presentation, which is, we're talking about all these hot topics in workforce. One of them being, how do we reach a young generation, right, and meet them where they are in their spaces? And you want to stop talking about it, you want to get to action. And this, to me, this career coach network is one of those examples. So do you want to talk about how you've organized that network and how their incentive structure is organized to really help the students?
Yep. So we, as of this year, will have about 100, and I'm not the career coach expert, so I'll give you the high level view, and then I can connect y'all with our person that's managing that. But we've got, we'll have about 140 career coaches around the state. We started with models that already existed in Tupelo with the Community Development Foundation, and then had broken down into Jackson, or expanded into Jackson County, Mississippi. But what we've done is we've said through our local workforce development areas, so we have 4, we call them in short PDDs, but that's what they are. They are running this program for our office. They are recipient of the grants, and each one is a little bit different, but they all report on the same metrics. It is invaluable, the reality of putting a human that understands the labor market, and this is all a learning process for career coaches too. But the reality is, people within high schools often don't understand their communities. They're too busy keeping kids alive. Like, that is not a judgment. Hear me plainly. I adore the work that our K-12 partners are doing. But there's got to be a connection point, because what we do is we just turn K-12 people loose and say, here, go work with industry. They don't have a frame of reference for it. So we worked with our local workforce development areas. It's mostly local workforce development areas employ these individuals. They are not state employees. They are employees of the local region. We provide the funding and the structure. They employ them, and they go to work. So these are people who are student-minded, who genuinely, they're not there for the money. I can promise you that. Sometimes they are retired teachers, things of that nature, that are just really digging down with the students and saying, what do you need? I mean, we have situations where a student would fall through the cracks in the normal systems, because the systems require you to fail before people can come in and help you. And our career coaches kind of serve as that bridge. So this program started last year. We had about 100 coaches in ours, and now we've got about 140 in almost every high school in Mississippi, or high school system. I think the right way to say that. Again, we're a rural state. We've got about 3 million people in the whole state. So some of y'all have cities that are bigger than us. But yeah, it's they're paid. Most of them are year round. We have some coaches that only work during the school year. So there's a lot of incentive there for people who want to be home with their children. They go on industry visits. They come down. They're coming to our conference in August. So they kind of start learning things that the school can't. They don't have the capacity to go do some of this stuff. And then they kind of back up the counselors and what's already happening in the region, and they're highly localized. So they know these kids, they live with these kids in the communities, they go to church with them, they go to Walmart with them, So we've actually had really good luck in a couple of places with our career coaches, helping us land a couple of new companies. Because that's what's being asked right now, is we've got industry coming in wanting, if they're looking at Mississippi, they say, okay, what specifically are you doing with your high schools? And so it's a really good point to say, this is how we're addressing the pipeline issue, because we've tried it cheap and easy, I think, as a nation, of here's some online, and the online tools are useful, don't get me wrong. But now we're saying we're going to double down and do it. And it's expensive and it's hard. And it takes a lot of human capital to get it done. But who better to work with humans than other humans? So that's where we're at.
Thanks, Courtney. Very well said. If anyone on the call would like to connect with Courtney, you could drop me a line. We'll also include her contact information in this week's weekly update. But yeah, thank you, Courtney. So much content and discussion topics in so little time. So I really appreciate you coming on. We are now at time. So Michelle, would you like to close us out for the day?
Yeah, thank you again, Courtney. Love learning about the career coaches and the industries that you all are working on, hoping to learn some more. And with that, everyone, we want to wish you a wonderful week. We will see you at the same time on next Monday. And thanks again for joining and again for making time. Take care, everyone.
Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.